Right. Let's move to the next section then. I think this has been mentioned once or twice in the course of the day, which is that in order to get access to some of the systems that we've been talking about, an essential element of that is a legal entity identifier, the way of digitally asserting your identity and enabling people to trust that identity as they cooperate within these systems. Now, we've got a bit of a revelation to come. I won't give too much away, but I think there's some exciting news that we're about to hear. But let's invite up the next panel for you who are going to discuss the scaling of the use of digital identities in the trading arena with Shannon Manders, the editorial director from Global Trade Review, chairing this group of experts on legal entity identifiers. So I'll hand over to Shannon. Thank you.
Oh no, wherever you're comfortable. Good. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to. Is this the last session of the day?
Yeah.
Welcome to the last session of the day. I'm Shannon Manders. I'm GTR's editorial director. GTR, as many of you will know, is a trade finance focused publishing and events company. Now, in global trade, identifying counterparties accurately can be a daunting task given the myriad ways in which they are referenced. Now, this complexity demands substantial investments of time, of money, and of resources. However, digital identities, such as the legal entity identifier, the LEI, offer a streamlined solution, condensing diverse identifiers into a single electronic code that is linked to verified business data on a freely, publicly accessible online registry. But despite its potential to really escalate and advance digital trade, widespread adoption of digital identities such as the LEI has to date been pretty slow. So to help address that challenge and also to drive awareness of the issue, the ICC United Kingdom, the World Trade Board, and GLEIF, the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, came together, excuse me, last year to start to think about this in a meaningful way and to write a report on the topic. So this report, which is titled Scaling the Use of Digital Identities in International Trade, is being launched today for the very first time. And it really shows how the use of a single global, what they call a business fingerprint system, can really make cross-border trading easier, it can make it cheaper, and it can make it more transparent. So that's what we're here to talk about today in a nutshell. With this esteemed group of speakers, they probably don't need an introduction, but I'm going to intro them anyway. Chris Southworth, as you know, is the Secretary General of the ICC United Kingdom. Alongside him is Michael Vrontamitis. Michael is a founding partner at T3I Partner Network, and he's also a member of the World Trade Board. And alongside him is Stephan. Stephan is the CEO of GLEIF, the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation. Welcome to you all. We only have, I think, 15 minutes. So you're like, we're going to keep this punchy. So we'll move through it very quickly, and then hopefully maybe we'll have a chance to take a question from you guys as well. But Chris, start us off. Tell us in brief, because no doubt everybody's going to scan the QR code and pick up a copy of the report. What is this report about? And maybe more importantly, why did we need it?
Yeah, so this was quite simple, really. What the LEI system, the legal entity identifier system, was set up by G20. Stephan, I'm sure we'll talk about this. You know, going way back into 2008, at the end of the financial crisis, for a purpose. The world's moved on dramatically since then. We're now all going digital in a big way, as we've all been talking about yesterday and today, with infrastructure coming in. That infrastructure now we need to be open architecture, if you like, in terms of infrastructure, which Nick has mentioned already. Public utility architecture, call it what you like. Common laws, interoperable standards, interoperable identity frameworks. At the moment, the world is an absolute mess of national identity frameworks, proprietary identity frameworks. There is no common identity framework for international trade except for the legal entity identifier. It's really important. It was set out by ICC as a foundational standard. That's why we're putting such focus on it, because it's the identity that connects everything in that digital trade system. Every piece of data is identified and linked to that piece of data. If we don't use an LEI and scale up the LEI, the system's not going to work as well as we want it to be. So that was the key purpose. I should say it was not meant to be a comprehensive study. What we wanted to have a look at, because we know what LEIs are, we wanted to first of all have a quick look at this corporate adoption piece. You know, what does that look like in 3 different countries in 3 different parts of the world? Vietnam, Kenya, UK. Remind ourselves of what the benefits of LEIs are, and then look at what can we actually do to help drive up adoption, and that's where the calls to action are. And I think in a UK specific context, you've heard everything today, just reminds us the opportunity here is enormous. Not only have we got borders going digital, single trade windows, all of us in the business community digitalizing. Companies House is under review right now. If we can link, well, Companies House frankly should issue a digital identity. All they have to do is an 11-digit code alongside your company number, job done. Everyone's got one. That's how easy it is. It's not quite so simple, unfortunately. However, Companies House is under review. We're all working on 2-3 year timeframes. This is doable, and that would actually create a really good global template of what every other country should do. So there's the huge opportunity for us from a UK perspective. But this is a massive problem. The identity infrastructure is simply not fit for purpose in today's world for what we're all trying to do over the next 2 to 3 years. It needs attention, and that's why we published the report.
Cool, thanks, Chris. Stephan, tell us a little bit about the current state of LEI adoption and maybe why it's been lagging to date.
First of all, thank you, Chris, for this very passionate speech about the LEI. Highly appreciate it. You know, Company House provides a legal truth on limited liability companies in the UK. But what about government organizations, churches, trusts, family office, and all other legal entities, sole proprietors, partnerships? They're all not covered. We have investigated over 1,100 sources for authenticated truth for legal entities around the world, tax registries, business registries, all around. They come with all kinds of issues, different allocation rules, different languages, different, accessibility of the data. And that is pretty much a nightmare that Chris was referring to. So in the aftermath of the financial crisis, when the banks were heavily under stress, they did not know their customers. The G20 nation leaders endorsed the system, the LEI system, which is basically a global business register, which is the same for every country in the world. We have like 222 countries covered in the world. And this business register usually would have been a government organization, but there is no global government. So a Swiss foundation, to be neutral, was inaugurated. I'm the CEO of the Swiss foundation. And on top of us, there's 71 regulators from all around the world responsible for the policies for the LEI. So it's not a product. We're not selling anything. We're not like Dun & Bradstreet or any other, private organization. This is really endorsed by the G20. And for instance, Bank of England is in there and other regulators. Now, and then we have issuing organizations. These are the registries, actually, 48 of them. There are a number acting here in the UK, London Stock Exchange, Bloomberg, for instance, and a couple of others. And that makes the obtaining of an LEI a breeze today. So that's really where we think this is now the right time to address this to a broader audience. And maybe one last sentence to that is, when you look at the use cases for an LEI, then I see the coin with 2 sides. One side is trade. That's what we discussed today all the time. All the exchange of information along the supply chain. But then there's also payment. That's where you get your money, and trade finance and all these kind of things. All of this is handled today in silos. And we have the big opportunity now to tear down those silos and to integrate this with one identifier. The regulatory community is now going to endorse the LEI in payment messages. So it's just another step for trade that is required.
Thanks, Stephan. Now, Michael, the World Trade Board put out a report last year, a Financial Inclusion in Trade Roadmap. It identified digital identities as one of the most important things that we need to kind of close that trade finance gap and to address financial inclusion in trade. Tell us a little bit about how, today we've been talking about the building blocks that we need for digital trade. What is the role that LEIs play in that whole digital interoperability framework, but then also maybe in terms of addressing financial inclusion in trade? Just a tiny question.
Yeah, just
couple minutes.
small, but let me try and boil it down and make it sharp. So I think when we looked at the financial inclusion in trade roadmap, and we spent about a year sort of interviewing a lot of people, discussing this with a lot of people, running a bunch of expert groups and so on and so forth. We identified there were some really core elements to what does it take to enable an SME to get finance quickly, and what are the actions that are required in order to make that happen. So it was an action-oriented roadmap. And there were three core building blocks. One was really around e-invoicing. So e-invoicing, if you have an electronic invoice, and we've talked about digital data coming in and enabling platforms to operate more effectively. So e-invoicing is a really critical data point. The second was really around ensuring that the law allows for factoring or allows for invoice discounting. A lot of countries don't allow it in the same way as it's allowed in some of the OECD countries. And the third element was really about knowing who it was that you're dealing with. When you have these three critical parts of data, that allows you to make credit decisions faster, it allows you to onboard quicker, and therefore allows for more rapid models. And what you've seen in some of the developing countries, or developed countries such as the UK, I mean, I was talking to one fintech the other day where they're able to leverage some of the existing stuff in the UK, and from what do you call it, application to loan disbursement is 25 minutes. Okay, so you can get really, really fast decision making really, really quick if everything is digitized. And LEI is just a core building block to that. Without an LEI, it becomes really, really difficult.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Stephan, you've just come back from sort of around the world trip, talking to counterparties around the world in terms of the innovative ways in which they're adopting LEIs or using LEIs. Tell us very quickly why LEIs are particularly pertinent and valuable to trade compared to other digital identities. For example, in 2022, GTR ran an article that called the LEI trade's missing number. Why is it important to trade? And what maybe just a quick glimpse into the conversations you've been having around the world with other trading nations.
So last 2 months were pretty busy with travel. So let's start in America. We joined the Customs and Border Protection discussion on a global business identifier for customs declarations. There, the LEI is part of the prototyping that they're doing at the moment, together with the barcode, the GLN code from GS1. Then I've been to Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Middle East. Abu Dhabi is now going to issue an LEI to all companies in the free trade zone. They do this to advertise the companies to global trade. And also, they just made it off the gray list from the sanctions, and also to provide transparency about the business going on. Other free trade zones in the world are looking into this, like Shanghai, for instance, at the moment. Going further to India, India is the first country that picked up the LEI for domestic payment messages. So it's already in the law in India that over a certain threshold, you have to have an LEI, otherwise you cannot wire money. And going further to the east, quite interestingly, Singapore and Hong Kong, that are two major trading hubs, as you know, big ports. They told us for the last 10 years that they don't need an identifier because they have one, their own. And now they're realizing that their identifier might be good in Singapore and Hong Kong, but not in Shenzhen or in Macau or any other place around the world. And now the countries, interestingly, maybe one observation, the countries with the most mature domestic model are now the first to embrace the LEI as a global passport. That's quite interesting. While other countries were still in the process of creating their own identity, they might fall a little bit behind.
Okay, quickly. All right, so quickly, we're I think running out of time, but there's a couple of things I want to drive home. Chris, firstly with you, this is a wake-up call to the industry, right? Tell us about why it's a wake-up call, and tell us about the role that the UK can play in all of this.
Yeah, so big issue really, as I just said earlier, the pace of change, as we're describing in terms of the infrastructure coming in, what you can ultimately do, trade cheaper, faster, simpler, more sustainable, that is completely out of sync with where we are on digital identities. as I said, it's not fit for purpose. We've got to put more attention onto it. So if there's two things to ask here. One, understand what they are, because that is the global framework for digital identities. Two, we must talk to government for those of us in the UK. And for other governments, again, we must talk to them too, so to help them understand that national identity schemes will not solve the issues that we are dealing with in a cross-border environment. Super important.
Excellent. And then Michael, final question from me, and then maybe we'll see if there's any appetite in the audience for one quick question. The report puts forward 5 calls to action. Which of those are the most relevant to the people in the audience today? What do people need to do?
Well, look, I think the first thing I'd say is, digital trade has always been a jigsaw, right? So we will talk about digital islands and bring the jigsaw together. And, we have to deal with each point. We've invested a lot of time and effort to get model laws implemented in multiple countries, and we've got really good progress on that. But you need to do all the elements of the jigsaw, and what we're proposing in the sort of the 5 action items. I could break them down into 3. Actually, there's 2 are really about going out and being an advocate and talking about digital identities. 2 are around adopting it, we talked about Companies House and in local registries and adopting LEI as a addition to local registries. The other or adopting in systems such as the single window system. So adopting in systems is a second really core action item. And finally, there's a call on government. Government is one of the largest procuring entities around. If they request it, then we're going to drive adoption.
Excellent. Any questions from the audience? Oh, we have one question. There we go. There's a microphone on its way to you. Thank you.
Thank you. How do you prevent identity theft with an LEI, please? In other words, how do we have the trust that it is what it says it is?
My answer would be twofold. Number one, all the data and everything else in the LEI system is cross-checked by accredited sources against the publicly available authoritative source. For instance, a tax registry in Mexico, right? So there's a huge effort in going into that. And that's why the European Central Bank tells us that this is by far the best advanced data set that they have for client identification. My second answer is regarding trust. I've heard this the whole day, trust. Everybody wants trust. I offer an alternative solution. I don't want trust, I want verifiability. End-to-end verifiability is much better than just trust. And therefore, we have created a digital verifiable identity, the VLEI, that addresses this issue.
Thanks. We have another question here. And the lady at the back was first, I'm told. Go ahead.
Sorry for this basic question. So say for a UK thing, you would check the GLEIF website, as an example, to verify LEI. Are we saying that when LEI is used globally, how do you verify that? Would that be, like, say it's good live, would something check the GLEIF, or is it something that they have their own local verification?
That touch bases on the same points from this gentleman here. The number itself, the LEI number itself and the data, of course, that could be falsified because it's just data. I put it on a piece of paper, you falsify it, done. If you use the digital LEI, then you have end-to-end verifiability with strong cryptography. And that makes you absolutely 100% sure that you're dealing with the right organization and that everything that this organization has shipped to you has not been tampered with. And that is a very important aspect, especially for global trade when we exchange so much information. Well, the global aspect, I want to be fair to say we have 2.6 million LEIs. This is pretty much like 90% of the global market capitalization, but far away from 40, 50 million entities that are engaged in global trade. So that is the challenge, and that is the SME space. And that is where, I think, Chris, you could add to the action points on how we can do that together.
Should we take the question from the gentleman in front?
I think you already partly answered the question. My question was basically around increasing the coverage of LEI to the MSMEs, the small and medium. So what is the plan? What is the roadmap for that? Because there are millions of businesses in India, that don't have LEIs right now, which are in the export, in the export business.
So you know the ATA system in India, of course, there is no such equivalent for corporates, and that's why the Reserve Bank of India has mandated the LEI. So the vast majority of LEI for Indian companies come through regulation and mandating. But we want to overcome this. That's why we want to work together with the industries and with organizations like the World Trade Board and ICC to go for voluntary adoption of the LEI through the industries. And one of the barriers that Chris pointed out, you can talk about that, is knowledge about it. People don't know about it.
Yeah, the biggest barrier, without any shadow of a doubt, is companies, especially SMEs, never even heard of it. They just don't know what it is. I mean, once you start looking at what an LEI is, the shopping list of benefits kind of speaks for itself. Anyone doing authentication, verification, it's a nightmare when you're trying to trade.
Attention, please. The fire alarm test
Oh,
is about
that's
to
great
take
timing.
place. Please take no action during this test. If you do not hear the fire alarm test, please notify your workplace services manager.
Great. Please do take action. I think it's the message we're trying to give here. I think it's really important. Education is a huge issue. So I think there's a role for all of us to educate, particularly organisations like ourselves, to just simply explain what it is. Let's not overcomplicate. That's the trouble with digital trade. Everything gets overcomplicated. It's really simple. This will make life a lot easier. It's really, to me, it's obvious. Is that the test?
Attention, please. Attention, please. Fire has been reported in the building.
Oh.
Please leave the building immediately by the nearest exit.
And go to the
Do
drinks.
not use a lift.
That's the tip.
Oh.
We're fine.
And collect your LEI.
Please. Attention, please. Fire has been reported in the building.
And collect your LEI.
Please leave the building immediately by the nearest exit. Do not use a lift.
I think you said, oh, no.
Attention, please. Attention, please. Fire has been reported in the building. Please leave the building immediately by the nearest exit. Do not use a lift. Attention, please. Attention, please. Fire has been reported in the building. Please leave the building immediately by the nearest exit. Do not use a lift.
We're all waiting for the next one, aren't we?
I think we're there.
Okay.
Do you still have your train of thought?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Attention, please. Attention, please. Call to action. No, we really need to educate. I think that's a really, really fundamentally important point here. And I think we all have a responsibility to do that through our supply chains. This is a solution. It's not a problem. And I do think it's really important that we talk to government as well, especially those of us in the UK where there is a convergence of thinking anyway about how we move forward on digitalised trade. But education first, talk to government second, start to use it. If anyone's a listed company, you've got an LEI, but probably aren't using it. Speak to internally within the company, start thinking about how you can cascade the benefits of that down through your supply chain, because it chimes in with everything that we've been talking about for the last 2 days.
Excellent, thanks. I think that's a great way, time to wrap. Maybe 2 minutes before would have been even better, but let's wrap there. Clearly, we're at the beginning of this conversation. So please do take the QR code and download the report. And we look forward to continuing this conversation with you. Let's show our appreciation to the panelists.
Well, thanks very much indeed to Shannon and to that final forgotten my words now, panel there. That was a really interesting way to finish today on a practical note about how ICC is taking and in collaboration with global partnerships is trying to make this stuff happen. And I think that's really the message that I've certainly taken away from today. And it's quite a different conference, I think from the one that we had 12 months ago, those of you who were here last time, you'd have probably heard that we, at that time, we were sort of still feeling our way towards what digitalization really meant. And I think what we've heard today is actually, it's not just a question of what is it, it's actually a question of when do we do it? We've clearly got a market for it. We heard this morning from some major corporate clients, we want to do digitalization. And we heard this afternoon, I'm going to carry on regardless, and we heard this afternoon from a whole bunch of people who have got solutions that are available now. We've also heard from the legal folk that the legal frameworks are there, not just in the esoteric world of legislation and regulation, but actually through international cooperation, through the UN, through the Commonwealth, and through WTO. So all of these tools are available to us now. We just need to get on and do it. And I picked up on Wayne's comment, you know, how do we make sure that next year's conference isn't one where we're saying, how do we make digitalization happen? But it's actually, gosh, we've made real progress. How do we now get ourselves right up to that tipping point so that we don't need any more digital conferences? Who knows, next year's could be the last one that we need, because after that, we can just let the market go and it could really be delivered. So I'm conscious I'm standing between you and a final glass of wine or a beer. I would just like to say thank you very much indeed to Deloitte for hosting us, to our sponsors. I just must make sure I read them all out, else they'll not forgive me. But to Arkit and got it. I've done so well up till now. Where have I gone? It's the alarm. If you'd have been back from lunch on time, we wouldn't have come across the. I'll use that as an excuse. No, I can't find it. Sorry. To where's there they are. They're down the bottom there. To Arkit and Trade Secure, to TraxPay, our silver sponsors, to our bronze sponsors, XDC Trade Network, eDocs Online, Wave BL, and Prima Trade, and to all of you. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your commitment. And please get in touch with us. You know, we can't do this on our own. We are just the conveners, the coordinators. We can provide some of the channels that will make your efforts that much more effective. But it is a team effort. And we heard from the minister that it's something we need to do both with governments and with the private sector. And I think together, and hearing what we've done today, I really think we can make this happen and make this happen soon. So please stay with us. Please go and have a drink. Sorry, not another drink. Just go and have a drink. Continue to network. Continue to make those connections. And by all means, get in touch with me if you're really interested in getting involved in the work of the centre. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, and safe home. Thank you.